everyone, and welcome to the Center for HBCU Research, Leadership, and Policies Turning Pages Author Talks episode. I'm so glad that you're joining us today, and we have two great authors who will speak with us about their publication, and I think really we'll have a really engaging conversation. So first, I want to introduce the two guests today. We have Dr. Ronald Palmer, who is professor and chair of the Department of Educational Leadership and Policy Studies at Howard University. Happens to be my chair as well. So welcome, Dr. Palmer. And we have Dr. Sosanya Jones, who is associate professor in the Department of Educational Policy and Leadership here at Howard University. Again, a colleague. We all are faculty members in the Higher Ed and Leadership Policy Studies program. Sorry, but anyway, so again, welcome to my colleagues. Really excited about the book that we'll be discussing today. Dr. Palmer and Dr. Jones, along with Dr. Alonzo Flowers III, are editors of a book titled Black Scholarship in a White Academy, Perseverance in the Face of Injustice, published in 2023 by Johns Hopkins Press. And so again, great topic. Certainly, we look forward to engaging you both in a discussion about the work. So let me just begin with a general question, either from Dr. Palmer or from Dr. Jones. What led you to do the work around this book? What about the topic interested you? Why did you decide that a book that focused on Black faculty in a white academy was important to do at this time?
I think the ideal really for this book was really thinking about the way in which Black scholarship was really devalued by the academy. When Black folks write on topics relevant to their community, the work wasn't seen as critical or as important, or they would face additional scrutiny when they went up for tenure and promotion. And sometimes, for example, Black scholars may publish in journals that target certain audience. And so reviewers, external reviewers who may not be as familiar with those journals may see those journals as less than and view that scholarship as less important and view that scholars having a less significant impact in the research field. So we wanted to do a book that really talked about the ways in which Black scholarship was really under attack, particularly when it was done by Black scholars, and to really provide implements or tools that universities can use to help facilitate the success of Black scholars who are doing work in a Black community.
Thank you. Dr. Jones?
And Dr. Palmer invited me on this wonderful project, and it just was aligned to my interests. I've had a long time interest in the devaluement of Black people, especially in white spaces. And I think the way Black scholarship is devalued and minimized goes to the core of what racism is. It doesn't embrace our full humanity, our full potential. And it's one of the ways that white supremacy uses to delegitimize our existence, is to say that our knowledge, our ability to even produce knowledge is limited. And so when Dr. Palmer invited me onto this project, I was really excited because it is a lifelong interest. But going back to what Dr. Palmer said, he provided a really great example in the book of an actual Black professor who was denied tenure because he published in the wrong publication. And it really went to the heart of, if a publication caters to Black audiences and Black scholarship and is not viewed as valuable, who gets to say what is valuable when we talk about producing knowledge? And that goes to where we publish, what we do our research on, how we do research. So I think this is very important, but it's also timely, especially in the current climate.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I love the way you framed all of this today and also in the book, in the introduction. And in fact, when I think about both your statements, certainly the example from the professor of color at UVA was an extremely uh, compelling example. But as you say in the intro, it's not atypical. I mean, the experiences are important to document, and I'm so happy that you all really dealt with this topic in this way. But again, it's not atypical or unusual. And so there's a quote that you it specifically speaks to exactly what you all said. It's really repeating what you all just shared, and that is the research of Black scholars is more likely to be questioned, scrutinized, impugned, and deemed inconsequential, especially when their research focuses on the Black and Brown community, which is exactly what Dr. Palmer and you, Dr. Jones, said. And also this anti-Blackness framework that permeates the book, I think is extremely important in terms of actually understanding what anti-Blackness means and how it's operationalized as really Black people lacking humanity, Black and Brown people. And so really, really compelling introduction and to some great chapters. Let me ask you a little bit about the what you framed as a Black scholarship in white academy. And in the White Academy, you spoke a lot, and the chapter speak in more detail about PWIs. But do you think do you believe that the White Academy is restricted to predominantly white institutions? I have to ask that because, of course, this is the HBCU Center, and of course, you two are colleagues of mine at Howard University, which is an HBCU. So I'm asking, is the White Academy um, um, only when we think about the White Academy, do we only think about PWIs? Either of you can answer.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really great question. But if we look at everything from accreditation to rankings to even legitimization in the Carnegie classification, the standardized metrics that are used are normed around PWI. So even when you're at a HBCU or any other MSI, um, you are held to standards, whether they're appropriate or not, that are normed around white students, white faculty, and really values that have been informed by Eurocentric ideas about what it means to produce knowledge, quality, merit. So we are still impacted by those things, and we see the detrimental impact of those things from everything from accreditation to our funding to who is legitimized as a scholar.
Yeah, to add to that, to add to Dr. Jones's point, I think that research done by Black scholars in the context of the HBCU community, I think it receives more support, which is great. But as Dr. Jones talked about, it's the metrics, the Eurocentric metrics that we use to uphold what does it mean to be a quality scholar? What does it mean to publish in well-regarded visible outlets, for example? So those are things that we still focus on, even in a context of the HBCU. So the notion of Black scholarship in a white academy is kind of like a misnomer, right? Because it's not merely an PWIs, it's pervasive throughout the academy in general.
Right, which is my point, and I guess I agree with you, Dr. Palmer. Well said. And I'm wondering um, if we can sort of create sort of out of this work as you all done, think about a way to expand the academy. Certainly in your recommendations, you talk about that, but in terms of thinking, what these norms and metrics that we've accepted as the only way to, be an academic or a scholar, perhaps we need to critique those really in order to get at that. So a little bit about this anti-Blackness and how it plays out. And you all gave some great examples. I mean, you were very specific, but I just want you to tell our audience what what does anti-Blackness look like? What does it look like in the academy?
Well, I would say when I think of anti-Blackness, I think
Mhm.
about it not just in the context of Black scholarship, but also the ways in which HBCUs are devalued. The way that HBCU courses do more with less, the way that folks question the educational quality that Black folks receive from HBCUs. So really treating Black as less than, as second-class citizens, is complete disregard for Black folks as human or anything associated with Blackness, for example. Like I always think about when I was going to make my college selection, I remember I got accepted to one HBCU, which was Cheney University, and a couple of PWIs. And I was having a conversation with my mom at the time, and she recommended that I attend a PWI because she said that I would get a better education at a white school than an HBCU. So that kind of speaks back to this notion of Black is less than. My mom herself, she never attended college, but she had this notion that anything white, for example, was better, was of higher quality.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, you know, I think especially for people who are non-Black and they've been taught um, anti-Blackness is just like a form of racism. It's a lot more insidious than that. We're talking about how to categorize things, property, knowledge, um, the production of things. Anything is less than if it's not coming from white hands, white spaces, white consciousness. That when we do things that cater to or center Black people, that it's somehow less valuable because we aren't fully human. And even if that's not explicitly said, it's implied.
Okay, Isaiah's going to edit that. I'll take it. Sorry.
Oh,
Sorry about that. So sorry. um, so let's start again. I'm sorry about that. Usually that doesn't happen because I try to record, put the sign on the door, but nonetheless, Dr. Jones, will you make your point again one more time? We can edit.
oh, okay. I mean, I just wanted to add on to that, in addition to what Dr. Palmer says, that you know, the idea of anti-Blackness is very insidious. And I think a lot of people think it's in your face, that you have to be saying specific words or be blatantly racist. But it can be very subtle, very discreet, in reflecting attitudes, notions, that somehow that whatever is connected to Blackness or Black people, Black culture is inferior, that it's less than, or that it's outside the human experience.
I agree. And some many years ago, at Stanford, I believe, there was a Dr. Sylvia Winter, who was a professor of Black Studies. She had a cohort of students who were really dealing with the issue of Blackness and humanity after the Rodney King incident, and they had an organization that they called NHI, No Humans Involved, because that was the code that LA police officers used when they identified Black suspects. So this idea of NHI, no humans involved, speaks to what you all just talked about in terms of humanity linked to Blackness, whether we're talking about individuals or, as Dr. Palmer talked about around institutions, what I think is extremely important to think about in terms of the devaluing of HBCUs, or considering that they are less than or inferior institutions because they're occupied by Black people, that they're led by Black people, they're attended by Black people. So again, very, very powerful point. So thank you very much for that. So in terms of, if you think about this book, why do you think it is something that would really sort of help to elevate our discussion in the Academy about Black scholarship?
Oh, go ahead, Dr. Palmer.
Well, I think there's been discussions about Black scholarship and the way Black scholarship has been devalued, but it's not been at the forefront. And this book places that conversation at the forefront of the discourse of the experiences of Black folks, Black faculty members who are going up for tenure and promotion, not just at within PWIs, but in the academy in general. Number one, this book too also provides really, really important equitable solutions that can be used to try to dismantle and address this anti-Blackness to help more Black faculty be successful in their pursuit of tenure and promotion. And we certainly need that because we know that the faculty now is still majority white. I think over 76% of faculty is about majority white.
Right. I think one data point I read is about 60% of faculty are Black. And at HBC, of that 6%, well, there's some debate about the numbers, but certainly nearly 30% of those 6% are HBCUs. So in terms of really thinking about, how we navigate the academy, and you're right, Dr. Palmer, how people ascend through the ranks is extremely important. So great point. So I'll speak a little bit about some of the recommendations that you all made, Dr. Jones, in your conclusion.
Yeah, what I really love about our book is that it gives you multi-layer recommendations. So there are system level recommendations for policymakers, especially institutional policymakers like presidents and provosts. But there are also recommendations about how department chairs and faculty can support junior faculty. There are recommendations for junior faculty who are trying to either enter into the tenure track pathway, or they're currently on the pathway. So some of the recommendations include how to diversify your portfolio, where you publish, how to think differently about who you're publishing for. So creating multiple publications in multiple formats for different audiences. There are recommendations about mentorship, how to get mentorship from people who have gone through this, how to form community, identify community so that you have that support, especially when you're encountering these toxic environments and processes. But there are also recommendations and some accountability calls for tenured faculty for, speaking up, advocating, being a mentor, and also looking at the system and the processes that are in place and how can we start to change the academy.
Which I found those very compelling, to say the least. So great. I want to also ask a question about again, I agree with a statement Dr. Palmer made about this. We spoke earlier about this not being new, but also how this book really illuminates this issue in a way that demystifies this tenure process, or the whole culture around being an academic or a scholar. And so even though we often talk about these things, maybe in our professional organizations or with our group of friends or our individual mentors, the fact that it is actually here in this collection, I think, is extremely important because it centers it in ways, and again, demystifies it in ways that are empowering, and also challenges people on a variety of levels, not just folks who are beginning on the tenure track and trying to sort of make their way, but really challenges us at a variety of levels to really think about not only our individual scholarship or research, but also the system, right, that we all are part of. So I really do appreciate the work, and I think it has all kinds of. It's a great resource, and it really it got me to thinking about really the academy structure, what we believe is important, and how we can challenge the system, but still move through if that's what sort of we want to do. So, Dr. Palmer, any comments about some of those recommendations that you want to add?
One of the things I would say, there's a recommendation about making sure that the external reviewers are diverse. That's important. Really making sure that the chair, the department chair, whoever is responsible for trying to solicit external reviewers, making sure that they really understand the research of the candidate going up for tenure and promotion, and that they have diverse perspectives. And that they include folks not just from top tier research institutions, but also have external reviewers who represent different places in the academy to get that diverse perspective.
And I thought that was an especially strong recommendation because that is so true. First of all, the whole process, because it's often sort of secret, whatever you want to call that, is not, open so that folks don't know some of these things that you're talking about. But certainly diversity and also it challenges the hierarchy. You all throughout your book talk about, sort of hegemonic structures, etc. But in terms of you're just privileging certain people to be a part of the process, that's already exclusive. That means there are going to be less voices, fewer perspectives, and the value of the work is less likely fully considered, particularly if we're using metrics that have been endorsed as the metrics in the academy. So I thought that was an extremely important recommendation. I also want to talk with you about, as I read the book, I certainly, it was published before we entered this particular era. And so now, as we think about diversity and anti-Blackness and spaces in the academy and how to be, more supportive of Black faculty and the research, perhaps that faculty across the board do on Black and Brown communities. What do you think how do you think that all changes some of the way you not approach the book, but certainly some of the recommendations that you're making in light of where we are now at this current moment, 2025 of March?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think, there probably are some more nuanced conversations to be had about how you approach critical scholarship, especially in light of the rollbacks for funding for DEIs and all of these flagged words. And I'm wondering how that affects the publishing world too. But I think at its core, these recommendations are going to be timeless because they focus on community, they focus on mentorship, they focus on being proactive about making sure you are strategic about your pathway through the tenure track. And so I think regardless of who's in office and what their agenda is, these are tools that someone can use to be more successful as they navigate the academy. And I also think it's important in light of the way higher ed is being scrutinized and criticized, that we're going to have to think more innovatively about how to be less elitist, how to communicate to different audiences. So we were kind of ahead of the ball in doing that because higher education is in a moment now. They're going to have to transform and open up and change and become more accessible. And a lot of the recommendations our scholars give speak to those things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Dr. Paul?
Well, I completely agree with Dr. Jones. I think one of my concerns is given the current climate that we're in, we might find ourselves where someone who wasn't really dedicated to trying to diversify or trying to support minoritized faculty members use the current climate as an excuse to justify their lack of engagement to really support Black and Brown faculty. So I think the recommendations that we provided in the book are very much relevant and sensible. But I just worry about what will that do the current climate that is to folks who have no dedication whatsoever to trying to support minoritized scholars.
Absolutely. And systems too that also are important in supporting them, whether that be hiring, promoting, etc. So I agree with you. And I also wonder in terms of what will that mean in terms of the wonderful discussion you all had about either an introduction, but also one of the articles about reviewers in terms of how research is reviewed by reviewers, and also again another that we mentioned earlier in terms of the ranking of journals, the perception of what is quality and what isn't, the idea that perhaps um, some of the publishing outlets that have been more receptive, perhaps, or spoke to a particular community that was important for that researcher. That there may be more justification to exclude or to not consider it in the same sort of ways. But I think this is an extremely important conversation, not only uh, with ourselves, but with the entire community, which I think you all did a really good job of making sure that was the case. So I'm really excited about the possibilities for expanding, our thinking about what it means to be on the tenure track sort of path and how you move from one rank to the other. Very, very important. Any other recommendations that you want to highlight from the work?
I mean, I love what you're bringing up because I do think we're in a moment of, rapid change. And, like you guys are describing, people are going to use this opportunity to justify their racism
Mm-hmm.
in non-racial ways. But I also think it offers a opportunity for action and progress, innovation. And I think we might be surprised if we're looking for opportunities of where to publish or even creating new places to publish, redefining how we define scholarship, quality scholarship,
Mm-hmm.
how it can be done. There are funders, there's organizations. A lot of our professional organizations have gotten more militant about, we stand for DEI
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
this is what this means. So I think, it's a scary time, but also it's a time of change that can really be a boon for Black scholars.
Mm-hmm. Great, great. Dr. Bob Maurice?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think to add on to what Dr. Jones said, I think there are several things that I, think about. Uh, we need to provide training to implicit bias training to reviewers. We don't do that. We just assume that folks uh, are able to be objective, but we have to realize that we are human beings, and that can be something that stands in the way of trying to promote Black scholarship, for
Mm-hmm.
example. One. Number two, we also have to be careful not to reinforce anti-Blackness in the academy. And what I mean by that is when a Black person publishes an article on Black folks, that work is not really seen as credible. But when a white scholar publishes the same thing, it's like, wow, this is a breath of fresh air. This is new and this is, we have to be careful with that because that happens a lot. Research is research. We have to be sensible that the researcher who's doing the research is doing it from an objective standpoint, and they bring knowledge with them that can be a benefit to all communities.
Mm-hmm. I think your point is extremely important, but I also think that you all talked about in the book, so certainly epistemologies and sort of worldview ontological. Oh, I can't talk. You have to edit that. You all in the book talked about epistemology and ontology in terms of how your worldview and your way of knowing impacts how you consider, you know, a research project or a question or whatever. So I do think that what you bring does provide a perspective. And I think, that varies from person to person, from researcher to researcher, but acknowledging that is extremely important instead of thinking that there's only one way. I mean, that's why this whole conversation around whether we talk about CRT or any kind of critical approach is so important because it challenges dominant thinking about whatever and offers perspectives that don't always challenge that, but certainly expands our thinking and perspectives in ways that are generative. So I certainly think what you're saying is so important. And also this point that you made, Dr. Jones, about opportunity. I do think that this is an opportunity for really enacting agency. I mean, part of it is I know, I've been around for a long time, and it really not amazes me. I'm so um, heartened by the expanded venues for publications, which has really made a big difference for a whole generation of scholars. I mean, the idea that only certain um, journals or certain publishers are worthy of our work really restricted access to many um, Black and Brown scholars and people who were in communities that did not have access to the networks that support those things.
And the people that would benefit from the knowledge, like, I was at a convening yesterday and the question was, who are we writing for? So I think this is an opportunity to push that question and look at alternative ways we can publish and get this information out, but also get acknowledged that these places are legitimate and not reproduce these hierarchies that, were not ever created for us.
And we do that sometimes. And Dr. Palmer's point about making sure that we're not enacting the same kind of anti-Blackness notions in our own spaces.
Yeah.
Dr. Palmer, I thought that point was extremely important. You want to say anything about that? Because I do see that happening all the time, and we just have to be conscious of it.
Yeah, I think we have to be conscious to look at research or what research is, not think about the person who's doing the research, and not think about the fact that because that person's Black, they may be subjective, but if the research is white, they may have a more objective viewpoint. Therefore, a white researcher's work on Black communities is seen as more legitimate. I think that's problematic. And that's certainly in an academy, and we have to call that out. And we have to work to disengage that. Because again, we're perpetuating notions of anti-Blackness, which is problematic in and of itself.
Well, I think your book does a fine job of calling it out, even in terms, I mean, in a variety of ways. I mean, not just in the chapters, which I think were amazing, but also really the framing was so important in terms of even, the example from the professor's experience moving through the ranks at a particular institution to even, discussing Nicole Hannah Jones' work and how, again, this movement that really calls out and illuminates some of this that often goes unspoken, or if not unspoken, still sort of embraced as a sort of a tenet of who we are in the academy. And we can, we've all seen it challenged over time. And when we do that and create more opportunities, I think it makes it a better, an academy that is more reflective of who we aspire to be, which is so important. Also, I would say this about the HBC Center's work. I'm sorry, Dr. Jones. We really have a tagline at the HBCU Center around HBCU researchers. We say HBCU researchers matter. Because again, often, just as Dr. Palmer said, the research that we produce may not be viewed as credible as folks at other institutions, or also we may not have the systems and the structure and the supports in place needed to support that research. So HBCU research matters, and also HBCU researchers matter. So, Dr. Jones.
No, I love that. That's a mic drop and a great way to end it. You know, HBCUs really are the genesis of Black scholarship here in America, and it nurtured some of the most brilliant accomplishments, and we have to continuously celebrate that, remember that, and keep nurturing it.
And one of the things I've noticed certainly about the book is that, and this is true for both you and Dr. Palmer in terms of your work, is that I think one of our students was included as either an author of a chapter or work with you on the project, which is incredibly important. And so one of the things I want to spend a couple of minutes talking about is our program, the Higher Ed Leadership and Policy Studies program that prepares people to work specifically at HBCUs and MSIs. And Dr. Palmer is the chair of the department and has led us in this whole starting the program and leading us through. And so I'm wondering in terms of, so not only are you making these recommendations based upon your scholarship in terms of the academy, but also you're actually walking the walk in terms of expanding the pipeline of Black folks in the profession, providing them with mentorship and support and experience and wisdom about how to actually engage the academy as a scholar. So Dr. Palmer, would you like to talk a little bit about HELPS and how you think that might be a way that we're sort of acting upon that you all make in your book?
Yeah, you know, one of the things I love about our program is the fact that we as faculty are intentional to expose our students to research opportunities, and we are collaborative. We're willing to work with students and to help them publish. And I have to say that's not true, at least from my experience, that's not true of all HBCUs that have a PhD program in higher education. For example, I got my PhD at Morgan State University, and the faculty there, they were very well accomplished, but they were just really bogged down with service and teaching, that they really didn't have that time to really engage students in research. And for us here in a HELPS program, we make that a priority. We know that having publications and presentations and grants, those are things that will help faculty, help students transition to faculty and be successful in the faculty space. And also encouraging students to think about different ways to publish, not just the peer review route, doing book chapters, doing op-eds, for example. Use the social media, anything to get your name out there to help brand yourself as a high quality critical researcher is important. So we make it a serious focus to really make sure that all students are well prepared and have those opportunities to be competitive and to really do important work in the HBCU space in particular, and also the MSI space, which is certainly necessary and important.
Absolutely, absolutely. Anything that you want to add, Dr. Jones, to that?
No,
Dr.
ditto. We do our best to nurture, future scholars and empower them as knowers, even in the classroom, whether they publish or not. Part of our goal here is to affirm that they have knowledge within them and something to say and something to contribute to the discourse. And so in that way, we're just continuing the tradition of HBCUs.
And and it really is evident in our students and their presence in the field of higher education, whether that's at conferences or receiving awards and fellowships, publishing. I mean, all those things are incredibly important in terms of really building a robust pipeline that can, again, change some of the statistics and perhaps the experiences that are chronicled in your book. Okay. Well, again, I encourage, certainly highly recommend and encourage people to pick up and read Dr. Jones and Dr. Palmer's and Dr. Flowers' great book, Black Scholarship in the White Academy. I think that, again, it really is an important contribution to the field that illuminates the importance of Black scholarship and also challenges some of the sort of metrics, or not some of the challenges the culture of the White Academy in terms of how we move through, are expected to move through the promotion and tenure process. So again, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a great conversation, and I so appreciate my colleagues joining us for this conversation, and look forward to future conversations. So again, thank you, Dr. Jones. Thank you, Dr. Palmer. And thank you for joining us on this episode of Turning Pages.
Thank you for
Great.
having us.